Welcome to another episode of Sales Conversations with Sales Experts. And it's an absolute privilege for me to invite the guy who's going to be sharing some thoughts and wisdom and ideas from a sales perspective onto this call. Jason Bay is a guy I came across a few months ago. He runs a company called Blissful Prospecting, whose focus and attention is all around engaging and helping sales and business people get understanding how they can interact with their prospects and start to prospect in the right way. And Jason is a really lovely guy. I've watched his interviews with a number of people, really brilliant at what he does, and I'm really looking forward to getting him on this conversation. It's a real great honor for me to get someone like Jason on board, who runs a fantastic series of webinars, and I know you're going to enjoy this video. So without further ado, let's get into the Sales Conversations with Sales Experts with Jason Bay from Blissful Prospecting. So great. So as I mentioned, I'm really pleased that I've got the chance to meet the Chief Prospecting Officer for Blissful. Really, and J Bay. I'm hearing this is this Jason, or do I call you J Bay? What's the best way to approach it? Come on, tell me.
You can call me J Bay. That's what most people call me. Except for my wife calls me Jason though. Yeah.
Well, I get called James normally, and by my mum when I'm in trouble. So it's all me when it's the people in our life. Look, so it's fantastic to have you on this version of Sales Conversations with Sales Experts. For those that haven't seen your stuff, give us a few moments to describe who you are, what got you into doing what you do now, and obviously what you're doing at Blissful, which is amazing. And we're going to share some stuff and links in the video and the recordings as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a challenge that a lot of business owners have that are selling B2B products or services or whatever it might be is getting more appointments. Right? Getting more sales calls. There's lots of ways you can do that, right? There's marketing. You can spend a ton of money on marketing and create content. And you can also have you and your salespeople go out and, make calls and send emails and that sort of stuff. And typically there are a lot of challenges associated with that, right? Knowing what to say when you make a cold call, getting someone to respond to your email. Oh, and this LinkedIn thing, how are we supposed to use that, right? So the question I'm really fascinated with, exploring the answer to is like, how do we get the attention of really busy people that may or may not know about our business that we would like to work with and help? And that's what we do at Blissful Prospecting is really, teach the frameworks around that, help people implement the systems, improve their messaging, feel more confident on the phone, that kind of stuff. The way that I got into this business was, so I'm 31 years old. When I was 18, my first adult job was going door to door selling house painting services. So here in the US, I don't know what this translates to in the UK, but to paint your home, to hire someone to do it, it's $3,000 to $10,000 US typically to do something like that. And that was my first job. I didn't even really actually know that I would be going door to door to sell it. They just kind of sold me on run a painting business over the summer to make money for university, right? So I was doing that, and it was I just found I had a knack for it, man. I've always kind of been pretty good, even though I'm introverted, and I used to be really shy at that time. Just starting conversations with people that I didn't know. And that's really where I learned how to hey, how do you add relevance into what you're saying? Tonality, how do you talk to people? How do you ask good questions? How do you get them to really think more about, hey, what the appointment will be like instead of what it will be like to actually hire you? Because the selling comes later when you're prospecting, right? It's about starting a conversation. So that was my first sales experience. I worked with that company for a while. I was their marketing director for 3 years. And the next big thing I did with them was start an outbound call center. So this was selling house painting services over the phone, right? So cold calling.
Yeah.
They're about a $35 million company here in the US. And we had about 15 reps, hired a call center manager. And then in 2014, I left that company because I wanted to work with other companies. And that's how we got into what we're doing at Blissful Prospecting. Is I just noticed this trend and pattern with B2B businesses too, small businesses especially, where there weren't a lot of resources for them to prospect efficiently, do that function, keep their salespeople busy between appointments, that they're running. So that's how we got into it, man.
Fantastic. And it's such a great story. And I've been listening to watching a lot of, we're going to put a lot of Jason's links in to the Blissful Prospecting, because you've been running this program over the course. Well, how I got into it, I registered for a program, and every couple of days there's this great bit of content, And I'm going to let you into a little secret, actually. I generally, rightly or wrongly, I'm a bit of an ACD. I have a clear inbox policy, bar replays that you've got of some of your stuff. So they sit there ready for when I go for walks in the morning. So I'll put a play. I'll link to one of them, and I was listening to
cool.
one with Dale Dupree the other day. That guy,
Yeah.
he's cool, isn't he, with Sales Rebellion? So, but look, there's
Yep.
some really great stuff there. So, by the way, do you remember what you do you remember your first sale then?
Yeah, my first sale. So it's kind of funny because this guy, Barry, he's my best friend now, but he was my boss at that time. So he was a couple years older than me, further along in college. And what he did is he helped college students. He taught them how to, run these businesses. So the way that they do it is you go out door to door one weekend, you get a bunch of leads, you set up a bunch of appointments the next weekend. So when you're home from, school, he was supposed to train me. So we do 10 estimates on the weekend. They're 2-hour blocks. So it's like a 10-hour day each day. Well, he goes like 0 for 5 with me on Saturday. Doesn't book any jobs. And I was like, oh man, does this work? Like, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And then the next day, I ended up closing like 3 out of the 5 estimates that I did, closed like $10,000, or something like that. And I was feeling really good. But the first sale I made was really funny because it was for a deck. So it wasn't even to paint the person's house. It was to paint and stain their deck. And I remember this older couple that lived right next to my best friend, Anthony, and his family growing up. And I remember like not really knowing what I was doing. I knew like the process flow for the sales call and like how it should go. And I knew I needed to build rapport and then talk about our company and then, price estimate and all this other stuff. But when they said yes, I was so surprised. I didn't even know like, because what we had them do was put down a 25% deposit, and usually they give us a check. And I had to step outside, and I can't remember the excuse I made, but I had to call Barry and be like, so who did they make the check out to? Like, is it 25%? Like, where do they need to sign on the agreement? Yeah. It was pretty funny, man. It was a lot of fun, but it was very nerve-wracking for sure.
I can imagine, and it's always that when I ask people on these, the sales conversations with experts, I always ask them about that first sale, but it's like people it's like riding, you always remember your first kiss, and you always remember your first dance and all this stuff, but you always remember your first sale. It's that great feeling, right? It's just you feel like you can achieve anything when you think, I've just made these people buy something.
Yep. No, it feels so cool because sales is interesting because it's really about releasing control. It's about allowing the prospect to have some autonomy because you can't force them to sign a check at the end of the day. You can't will them into doing anything. The only thing you can really do is just create an environment where they feel very comfortable being open with you. And you create an environment where, hey, they see value in this and they want to do it. And they give you money, right? They sign the agreement, whatever it might be. So it's interesting because like that happens, yet I didn't force this person in any way to do that. Like I didn't really control that situation at all. All I did was just create an environment for them to say yes. And that's like so cool once you get that concept where it's like you can have faith in the process, right? That, hey, if I do these things and I create this environment, 4 out of every 10 times, I think that was my closing rate. 4 out of 10 times this will work if I do it properly.
Good numbers, no? They're really, really good numbers. And it's ironic, isn't it? Because I talk to a lot of businesses and they want to convert everyone. I'm like, well, that's just not going to happen. It's not realistic.
No, think of it like a batting average. Yeah. If you're closing like over 300, if you're batting over 300, you're going in the Hall of Fame here in the MLB. You know what I mean? So if and it depends obviously on what you're selling, right? The more transactional the sale, probably the higher your closing rate should be. But yeah, if you're closing 1 out of every 4, 1 out of every 3 people you meet with, like you're killing it. You're crushing it.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll talk in a minute about some of the elements around what you do and how you get people's attention, because I think that's fascinating, an area that are, but what, you obviously work with lots of business owners, whether it be big or small. What do you see as the biggest sort of failings that not failings is the wrong word, but the biggest weaknesses or things that businesses get wrong when it comes to selling? What are the things that you notice that they generally tend to do?
Well, there's a couple things, but it really stems around a theme of having no empathy for their prospects. And when I say empathy, they just don't really know who they are, what their problems are, how they talk about their problems, why they would even engage with a company like ours. The whole approach is a very me-centered approach versus a you-centered approach. So me-centered is I send an email and I'm like, hey, James, my name's Jason. I'm with Blissful Prospecting. We work with these kind of companies. We help this. We do this. Here's a case study. Here's some content. And you know what? Most people are not very drawn to messages like that. You know, it's no different than meeting someone when we could actually meet in person, and they just go up to you and they just start talking about themselves a bunch. Like, who wants to have a conversation with that person?
But
And you need to do the opposite. Oh, go ahead.
no. It's so. I'll let you carry on. It's so true. I have a model of how I say on my YouTube channel, how sales is like dating, and I always say to people, if you go for a first date with someone, and all you did is that person talks at you for 20 minutes about how great they are, I said, would you go on a second date with them? And most people say no. I just leave the restaurant or the bar as soon as I could. So why do you want to do it in sales then?
Well, yeah, it's basic. You know, when you look at empathy, a lot of psychologists, when they look at like, well, what's the origins of empathy? Why does it feel so good to be understood? Right. And a lot of what they looked at was, you know, empathy was a skill that people had to develop in tribe days, where if I can be more in tune with James and what you're feeling and where you're coming from, that might help me detect danger a little bit better. Right. If I can trust this person. So being in tune with other people and how they're feeling and what they're feeling and be able to talk to that started as a survival skill. And it feels really, really good because we adapted and we need to have that skill. And the way that's translated into today's world is, hey, you know, stranger danger with a salesperson, right? It's like, oh, I'm talking to a salesperson. Like, that's danger for a lot of people. I might get pushed to do something I don't want to do. This person might try to take advantage of me. They're trying to sell me something. They don't care about me, right? So like the person needs to feel understood in order for them to be disarmed. And the way you disarm people is just by talking about them. It's just empathy, like talking to their situation, talking about their problems, their business.
It's such a great point you make, and it's why I love talking to people like yourself because the way you talk about sales is exactly the way I resonate, and I say to people about it. You know, you put yourself in their shoes. You know what? You know, I do a Saturday sales tips email, and I shared a story about one of my first ever sales outings was when I went to present at a company called Nokia. So you might remember Nokia were years ago very good as a mobile phone provider, and I went from one of the companies out in the UK. They were an American company called 3Com actually, but that's where I started, and I went to Helsinki. Anyway, long story short, I presented very badly for a period of time, and this guy came out of the room, the head of IT, and he said to me, just wanted to let you know, you're 3% of my world. And I went, what? What do you mean you're 3%? He said, what you do, your data switches that you offer are 3% of my world. I have servers, all these other bits of software. So just think about that next time. And I was like, you know, when you get made to feel really small, but it was a really good lesson for me because it was like, you know, I hadn't put myself in his shoes. I hadn't thought about, I was just talking about how great we were and rather than thinking, hey, they've got other things that are going on in their world and what they're doing. And it's such a good point. You've got to put yourself in the shoes of your prospect or your client and think, what are they going through, and have that empathy. And you were going to say something else as well before I rudely interrupted you. But
It's all good, man. That's how you know you're having a good conversation, is when you interrupt each other a little bit. You know what I mean? Exactly. So I think like feeling understood that's really at the core of it. Is that I'm not going to be open to engaging with someone and being honest in any kind of relationship, friendships, spouses, whatever, unless I feel understood and the person's actually listening to me and is also prioritizing my needs. So you got to take that into the sales conversation. Instead of putting your sales hat on, it's like, dude, put your freaking human being hat on. You got to just be a person, you know, and just think, like you said, put yourself in the other person's shoes. But every communication interaction with people is exactly that, you know, like, how do you get along with people? Like, that's what my therapist told us. So I go to therapy. Like, one of the things he said that really stuck out to me was, you know, life is really just about like your ability to get along with other people. And how do you get along with other people? Well, you get along with other people by also talking about them and like engaging with them and making them feel understood. And that has to happen in most cases before you can talk about your thing and expect them to understand you.
I love hearing this stuff, and it's so important because it's the reason why I think people, you know, we said at the start, you know, there's this danger around salespeople, and unfortunately, it's because people get taught that sales is about you and about saying how great you are. And I always say to people, your prospects don't give they don't care for who you are. They don't care for how good you think you are. And even if you've been taught by some business guru to go and pitch and say how good. They don't, excuse me, I say they don't give a shit about that. All they care about is what you're going to do and make an impact in their life. How are you going to make their world a better place? How are you going to take away, and I always say people only buy things for two reasons, a problem or a want. How are you going to take away that problem or make them want something and aspire to something? And if you can't do that, you ain't going to last very long. But yeah, a lot of people do it badly, and it saddens me, and it's why I love getting people like you on these conversations to try and share this idea that just focus on them, not you, and you got half a chance.
Well, you bring up something so interesting there too, where it's like you said pain and want, and that's this whole concept of like, sometimes it's called pain and gain. People seek pleasure, avoid pain. It's all the same stuff, right? And what you're really doing when you sell stuff at the end of the day is you're just selling change. Like the person, if you're selling a widget, a piece of software, or whatever it is, I'll give you an example. We're working with a company right now that sells a consulting service where they'll come in and identify areas where the huge companies are overspending on their utilities and waste and all this other stuff. And they'll come in and say, hey, we'll save you money. And then we split the savings with you, right? Well, when we're prospecting for that, if we're reaching out to a CFO, they're already getting this done. They think that they are, at least, right? Aren't they monitoring expenses with their team and all? Like they're already doing something. So what we're having to come in and do is like, we're really talking about getting them to change. And guess what happens when you try to get people to change? People are incredibly resistant to change. Like I use Dollar Shave Club out here. I don't know if they have that in the UK.
Yeah, they have, yeah.
At Dollar Shave Club, used them for probably 7-8 years because I was like, oh, wow, I can get my shaving cream and all that other stuff delivered in the mail. I did not switch that entire time, even though it would be really easy to switch because there are actually less expensive alternatives to that, until coronavirus hit. And my wife and I were just kind of doing an inventory of everything we're spending on. It's like, hey, where are some opportunities for quick, easy savings? And Dollar Shave Club was one of those things. It took coronavirus for me to switch my shaving cream and razors.
Yeah.
Something that costs less than $10 a month for me. So think about what you're selling and what you're doing with your prospects. You're trying to get them to change their way of doing things. And people only change when the pain is high enough to where they want to change, like you said, or the aspiration is high enough. And usually it's a combination of the two. But that's a really important thing to understand. It's like, what are the big pain points that align with this person's initiatives and their job priorities that you're helping them with, the problems? Or how are you helping them be even better at what they already care about? And one thing I always say is that as salespeople, oftentimes we come in and we try to make our thing the highest priority on the prospects list, and that's just not going to happen. You need to align with their priorities. You need to figure out how your thing fits in with the things that are already important to them.
It's so right. Again, it brings on. I have something called the 4 Ps of prospect delay, as I call them, which are, it's not personal for them, it's not a passion for them, it's not a priority for them, it's not a pain point for them. And unless you figure those things out, you're just literally not going to get where you want to get to, because someone's on priorities list, they will come around to it. That's why we all say you've got to do your prospecting, right? You've got to do the work. If and I'm not the sort of man. You look like a man that could have good abs, but I'm not. But I always say to people, you've got to do the sit-ups to get the abs. Yeah, if you don't do the sit-ups, you're not going to get the abs. It's simple as that. And the reality is, in sales, you don't do the work, and yet so many people don't want to do the work. They want to go in, they want to sell them. No, it didn't work. And it's like, well, you haven't even built a relationship. You haven't even tried to understand them, and then you've literally just given up on the first hurdle, right? Okay, well. And you think, why? You wonder why you're not successful in sales. It's just these mistakes, unfortunately, that a lot of companies make. And do you see that quite a lot still in the US, that a lot of people still do it quite badly? Or I would have thought I learned a huge amount from guys like yourself and other great US salespeople. But is it changing in the US, do you think, or is still a lot of companies doing it quite badly?
This is a total anecdotal guess just based on my interactions and just other things I hear from other sales trainers and coaches and consultants. But I would venture to say 95% plus companies do this in a really shitty. And I'm talking Fortune 1000 companies, some of the big companies. I get cold emails from them, man, and they suck. It's like, and the pandemic is really kind of interesting because I think it's humbled a lot of these bigger companies where, hey, you can't just sell based on your reputation of your product anymore.
Yeah.
Because there's so much competition, and I think it's getting better, but I think it's such a slow progression because the companies, think of the people who are leading these bigger companies. These are people that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s. Think about the era they sold in. They were selling 20, 30 years ago.
It's true, but you're right. But they also had Zig Ziglar, who was one of the greatest salespeople, and Jim
Yeah.
Rohn and the people out there that should have inspired them to be able to think better. But maybe, like you say, maybe that just took a generational thing as well. But no,
But you could get away with more. I think you could get away with more then.
yeah, you're right, because it wasn't the internet to be able to search on stuff and find out whether people were telling the truth.
Well, yeah, I mean, Google talks about ZMOT, zero moment of truth. That happened all of a sudden when search engines came about. Buyers didn't need salespeople for information anymore.
Yeah, this is it. So look, I know you know the stuff that I love this. We could talk all day about this stuff, but talk about because what you said at the start was brilliant about how you guys at Blissful Prospecting are trying to engage with people that are very busy. And reaching out to them. And I always say to people, you've got two routes for sales. It's either the leads come to you from your inbound content and what you do and how you do it, or you've got to go out and find people. You've got to go and reach out. You've got to go and, if your ship doesn't come, come in, you've got to swim out to it. There's no option otherwise because the numbers don't change. So talk to me a bit more about, how you guys are specialized in that area and what some of the things you see that, that work really well that, some of my watchers can take some advice from.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't think it's like, I think you should do both. Yeah, I think it's an inbound and outbound. Like I see outbound work way better when the inbound engine is strong. So when you have good content, thought leadership, you've tested copy on your website, validated your offer, et cetera, like the outbound portion works extremely well. So there's like 3 components to the framework. So it's pretty simple. It's identify, engage, convert. So identify is what is my ability to identify a good opportunity? What does a good company look like? And who are the people that I'm reaching out to? There's a couple of things you want to think about. And it sounds so simple, but every company I work with doesn't really do a very good job of this. They say things like, oh, we can work with any company that's above 500 employees. We can work with any company that's 50 to 500. Like we can help everyone. And yeah, you can, but imagine if someone reached out to you for personal training, let's say, for example, and they just said, yeah, I can help everyone.
Not for me.
Versus what would it feel like if they're like, yeah, we work specifically with entrepreneurs, people that run businesses that are super busy, that like finding time to work out's really hard, right? Like you need to specialize. Even it's not about saying no to people, but from an outbound standpoint, it's like it needs to feel very specialized to the people you're reaching out to because you're interrupting them. So take a look at where your business is the strongest in terms of case studies, social proof, shortest sales cycles with companies that you sell to that just seem to kind of get what you do, and create ideal client profiles around that. So it should be very specific. Hey, I sell to B2B software companies in this industry with 50 to 500 employees with sales teams of this size. They're experiencing this kind of problem. Like if you can get really specific like that, you don't have to do as much personalization because you're segmenting, and the segmentation takes care of a lot of the messaging for you. So in the identify bucket, again, you need to have clear ICPs and personas, and you need to know the second layer to that on the persona side. So you need to know the language that your customers use. And you do this by doing customer interviews, and you do this by recording sales calls and demo calls and all that other stuff. You really need to know like what are the problems in their language that your product or service solves for them, why they decide to hire you, what the value is. Like you need to know all of the things around the pain and the gain stuff we talked about in their language. And doing a customer interview is a really easy, simple way to do that. Or just pay close attention. Like I literally have documents of every sales call I do. If I hear them say something that really stuck out, I put that on the document. So that anytime I create marketing materials or prospecting emails or make cold calls, it's like I can say, hey, I don't know if you're experiencing this, but I was just talking to a small business owner the other day and they mentioned this. Is that something you ever run across? Right? You need to be able to do that. So the identify bucket, I need to identify good fit companies and I need to know the personas that I'm reaching out to. The engage bucket, that's more your messaging. So how do we engage them with conversation starters? So conversation starters, there's a couple elements to that. One is sequencing. So you can't expect to send one email to someone and get a response. And you might get it if it's really good, but you can't have this mentality where I reach out a couple of times and then I don't want to bug the prospect anymore. So I stop reaching out to them, right? There's a persistence element to this. Rule of thumb, 12 to 15 touches typically for to get a hold of someone these days. Takes place over 30 to 45 days. You want a mix of at least phone and email, so it needs to be multi-channel. And we're going to space out the touches typically 2 to 7 days apart, further apart as the sequence progresses. You can do this manually, or you can use a tool like Outreach, SalesLoft, VanillaSoft, any of those other sales engagement tools, right? So there's the sequencing part of it, and then there's the messaging part. So what goes into that sequence? So the first touch, you're going to call the person. If you get their voicemail, you're going to leave a voicemail, send a connection request on LinkedIn, and send an email all at once. And the basic premise of the message follows our reply method framework, and it's pretty simple. So the reply method is an acronym. R stands for relevant results. So I need to be talking about things that this person cares about, referencing companies we've worked with that are similar to theirs, and like what kind of results that we get that are related to the things they care about. Empathy, problems. We already talked a lot about that. I need to talk about the problems we solve. P needs to be personalized, right? I need to actually research this person, come up with a couple good sentences. L, laser focus. Emails need to be less than 5 sentences or 120 words, ideally. Your opener and your cold call needs to be 10 or 15 seconds, right? Short attention spans, keep it short, choppy. And the why is for you oriented. So it needs to be about the person and make them the hero. Can't be about making me the hero. And I went through that super fast, but the email structure and the cold call structure are very similar. It goes P first. So after hey, James, this is Jason with Blissful Prospecting. Hey, I know probably caught you in the middle of something here, but you got maybe 30 seconds or so. I can tell you why I'm calling. And you let me know if you want to keep chatting. So I do a permission-based opener, and then the framework is exactly the same as the email. Personalization. Hey, I saw that you're doing this thing, or I saw this particular thing. Empathy. Typically what I hear from people like you is they run across these problems. Relevant results. One of the ways that they're fixing it is by doing this, and it's achieving this. And then call to action in the email or in a cold call, you sort of segue into the questions that you want to ask. But it's that framework: personalization, empathy, relevant results. And that's the messaging, part of it. Sort of gave you the TLDR, for the Reddit users out there. So once we have the identify piece, we know who we're reaching out to and what their problems are. We're engaging them with these conversation starters. Now it's time to convert. So the convert piece is, how do we get them to take a phone call, right? And how do we do good discovery? And there's a couple just kind of quick things there, but there's a philosophy around what is the reason for the call? And I call it teach, don't take. So instead of saying, I want to do a 30-minute demo with you, or I'd like to do a discovery call, which is so stupid, right? If you get an email from a company and they say, I want to do a discovery call with you, that's really weird, right? To tell someone you want to do a discovery call with them, right? Why don't you just call it an intro call, right? Or just a meeting or whatever, right? I know, I'd like to schedule some time with you, but there needs to be a reason. So the teach, don't take philosophy is, hey, James, I'm working with other sales trainers, and what they're doing to fix this problem is this. I'd love to share some of those insights with you. You need to have something that you're sharing that can be helpful to that person about how people like them are handling a problem. Yeah, what's the value? It can't just be the time on the call. What am I going to get in return? So that convert piece is really figuring out what can I share with this person about the problems that we're solving for similar companies like theirs. That's kind of it in a nutshell. That's the blissful prospecting. The framework there is in those three areas.
Honestly, I love it, and it fits into all the guys that I've been watching, and it's so funny because you mentioned about identify. I say to people, when people ask me now, cold calling, James, should I cold call? I say to people, no, I don't cold call, because cold call is literally talking to a list of people on the yellow pages, A to Z. Targeted calling is very much alive. So that's the phrase I'll say. Because if I approach someone and say to them, look, I'm great to speak to you, Jason, but I'm talking to other business owners like yourself about challenges X and Y. How are you dealing with those challenges? Now, you guys will probably do it better or differently, but the point being is at least I've made someone think, and if I have made them relevant and empathetic, so they're relevant to that person's issue,
yep.
At least I'm going to go, well, okay, well, I have got that challenge, but who are you again? Do I want to talk to you? And then there's a conversation to build rapport and whatever else. But that's better than just saying, do you want to buy my shit? Because people are going to go, well, no, I don't actually. Who are you, by the way? And no, put the phone down. So it's
yeah.
And it's funny because I'm doing a conversation with Richard from Refract.
I love Richard.
Yep. Yeah, great. And I love the introduction that he had, the 35 seconds thing. I thought that was brilliant when I was listening to your outline on that. So I'm really looking to share some of that stuff afterwards. But it's so, like you say, it's about getting people to, because I always believe that, and I say to the people I work with, it's your duty actually, if you really care about the other person, if someone's struggling and you see them across the other side of the road, you could walk up the side of the path, or you could actually say, hey, do you know what? It's my duty to go and check they're okay and to look after them. And our job as sales and business people is to, if we've got a real passion about helping someone solve a problem, it's our duty to get in contact with them and say, hey, look, I know you might be going through this issue right now. Talk to me how you're dealing with that, or what's been the biggest impact on you, and what's it making you feel, and blah, blah, all those other great things. And that passion to come through, people then go, well, okay, you sound like you're keen about this stuff. Yeah, well, it's because I care. I want to help you solve it. I want to get you in that better place.
Yeah. And like what I hear in your voice is conviction. This is something I've been talking about lately. And it's, you could say all the right things, but if you don't really believe in what you're selling, and like this company, that consulting client I was just telling you about, the cost consultants, you know, one of their core values is, you know, being relationship oriented versus being transactional. It's like they really believe in this. And I was like, well, do you tell your prospects that? Do you tell them, well, hey, and one of the things that's like a company core value and something I really personally believe in is building relationships with our clients. And a lot of people we end up working with for 10, 15 plus years, helping them save money. It's really about the relationship and not about how can we save you money next month.
No, it's so,
you know, it's like, do people hear that? Does that conviction come out? Do you really believe in that's probably like 2/3 of it. And the other third is like saying the right things, you know, but that conviction and that belief, that's going to get that emotional part of the sales equation into play, where the person's like, I like James. He really wants to help me.
It's such a good point. And you mentioned at the start about tonality and the importance of tonality and using that right tone with people. You know, we all know those sort of these experiments that were done around the importance of not just the words, but how you say it and how you deliver it. And again, do you feel that a lot of salespeople generally get that part wrong as well? Do you, or do they come back to you and say, oh, this didn't work, and you listen to the calls and you think it's because you've sounded like a robot?
Yeah. Tonality is important, but at the same time, I think we tend to overthink it. Like, I don't know. I'm not thinking about my tonality right now in talking to you. You know what I mean? And that's not just because I've mastered tonality. It's because we're just having a conversation, dude. So I think it's like your mindset around it. So what I wrote down just now as we were kind of talking is I think the belief is a big part of tonality. Do you believe in what you're selling? If you don't believe in what you're selling and the value of it, there's, you know, some people would say find another company, but I don't always think it's because the company's bad. You may not actually understand what the value is. So what can you do? Like, as a salesperson, especially, like, do you have your sales team as a business owner really pour through all of your testimonials and case studies and like videos of clients just loving the work that you guys do so they can believe it? You know, I call it drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Do your sales reps and your sales team, do they drink the Kool-Aid? And if not, that's one way you can do it. The other way is like, if you're selling the SaaS, is, dude, have your sales team meet with customer success, facilitate a meeting once a month where customer success just comes in and talks about all the cool shit that they're doing for your clients, your customers. You know, like, get that belief. So I think tonality comes from that. The other thing tonality comes from, there's a physicality component of it. So there's like the little simple stuff like, dude, are you slouched over like this? And does it sound like this? Or are you sitting up in your seat or standing up even?
Yeah.
Right. Dude, go on a 5-minute walk before you make cold calls, right? I mean, there's all kinds of little stuff like that you can do to just get your body and your blood flowing. And then lastly, on tonality, I think it's the mindset around, you know, leading with curiosity. So instead of being assumptive that I know who this person is and I know exactly what their problems are, what if you just led with curiosity? And your voice sounded more like this. Hey, James, you know, I was doing some research on you and it looked like you guys are doing this, and we typically help people, you know, with these types of problems. That's something you're running across right now. Like, the tonality takes care of itself if you come from a place of like, hey, I'm really curious about how I might be able to help this person.
It's a great point, and there's a phrase that there's a video I did around, you know, we all probably know the Daniel Goleman stuff around emotional intelligence, and I coined a phrase of ESI, emotional sales intelligence, which is that ability to, like you say, just engage, just to be curious. There's another human being you're talking to, that, you know what, just be intrigued by them. Be like, we always have this saying, right, be about being kind, but just, you know what, you never know who they might be. You never know where you might have met someone that they know, and vice versa. And this little 7 degrees of separation we all live in. What a small world. Like, if we just take a few minutes just to understand someone else. Oh wow, I didn't realize you went to college X, or you went to this place, and I've got a friend that knows that place. Before you know it, you built up a rapport that then makes someone go, well, I quite like Jason, actually. I want to have that conversation. Yeah, I will meet with him again and find out what he's got to say or whatever else. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
no,
yeah, just a genuine interest in other people. It's no different than the same exact stuff you would do at any social gathering, right? I mean,
yeah.
the people you like talking to are the people that seem genuinely interested in you. And that's such a rare thing, actually. So if you can accomplish that when you're prospecting and selling and like just show the person you're genuinely interested in like who they are and like what they really care about and trying to find a way to help them, dude, people really respond to that because you just get so little of it in your daily life.
It's so true. It's so true. So who's been your sales inspirations or mentors over the years, then, Jason?
I would say for me, one of the first big mentors was Jeffrey Gitomer. You know, the Little Red Book of Selling was the first sales book that I read. So that really made an impact on me. I've watched 3 of his seminars and I cold emailed him a couple of years ago to get on his podcast and they said, yeah. So I got to actually meet him and
Nice.
we text every now and then. I'm not best friends with him or anything, but that's been kind of cool. I would say he was one of the first ones. And then in terms of other sales mentors, I mean, there's really been like a couple people that I learned from. I don't know if it's like a formal like mentorship, kind of
people that
thing.
inspire you, the sort of stuff that they talk about. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Todd Capone, Transparency Sale, like love his stuff. Like he's so like when he came on our podcast and talked about psychology, I'm like, I call him Dr. Todd. I'm like, dude, this dude is so well versed in psychology and like behavioral science and how that plays into like sales through his experience that I'm just like, oh man, that made me like, I was like, I need to step up my game in that area, incorporate more of this. So he's the person that sticks out. Another person, sort of early on when I was getting into sales development, this is 2-3 years ago, John Barrows, obviously like his stuff, listening to his podcast and how he goes on the companies he works with. That was kind of cool. I looked up to a lot of their work. And then I would probably say another person that's really impacted the work that we do, especially on the cold calling side of things, is Art Sobczak, author of Smart Calling.
Smart Calling. I listened to his podcast.
Yeah.
Great podcast, Art's got.
Yeah, we actually got a little shout out in his 3rd edition of his book.
Yeah.
He talked about the cold email I sent him to get on his podcast, actually, in the video, and like what we talked about with personalized videos and stuff like that. So that was cool, man.
I just wish you changed the quote of the day, the cheesy quote of the day on the podcast. It always makes me cringe when I listen to that bit. Maybe it's just me, but it's just like, it's that time. You know what that time again it is? And you just hear the quote and you think, oh my God. It's coming.
The dude's voice. The dude's voice is a little strange, but so his work has been pretty impactful. Dude, I would say those are the people like off the top of my head that like come to mind.
Yeah, no, they're great and they're great inspiration.
Probably those people. Yep.
That's fantastic. And look, we're coming to the end of the session because I know you're a busy man. You've got lots to focus on today and you have the rest of your day. But this is great. But just when you meet people for the first time and people say to you, "Hey, what do you do?" and you tell them, "Hey, what are the top 2 or 3 things you say to businesses? I know you mentioned about the empathy and the ideas, but what for people that are worried about selling, what do you say to them? Because they do worry. Business owners worry about it, don't they? They worry about being seen as a salesman. They fear of rejection or these other issues. What do you say to them to overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah. So, I mean, if someone like that was asking me what I do, I would say, hey, something that I hear a lot from other business owners is that they're very reluctant, to prospect and to sell because it doesn't feel very good. And what I'm really passionate about helping people is go from reluctance to confidence in selling. So how do you feel good, about what you're doing? So I think a lot of it is framing, what are we doing here? If you sell stuff to people that you don't really believe you can help or that don't need what you're doing, you're going to not feel great. You're not going to feel great about that. So let's talk about what we're doing here and actually frame this around how do we help people? What are the ways that you help people? And that's all sales is just finding out people that have problems and figuring out how you can help them solve those problems. And if you can't help them or they don't want to be helped, that's a totally okay outcome.
It's okay.
So
it's okay if it's not right. No, I was going to say it's okay if it's right now. If it's not, it's not a problem. It's not personal at you, is it? They're not saying, hey, I don't like J-Bay. They're just saying, hey, it's just right now for me.
Yeah. And you're not responsible. This is what I learned through therapy is like, you're not responsible for the other person's feelings.
Mm.
So if you hop on a sales call and the prospect's having a bad day and maybe they hang up on you or they cut the call short, dude, like this is a person, they have so much other context and stuff going on in their life. You don't even know what happened to them that day. It's not you.
Yeah.
Like you're not responsible for how the other person's feeling. Certainly you need to empathize and talk to that, but that doesn't need to mean that you need to agree with them. It doesn't even mean that you are the cause of that. And I think if you can separate the need for, you know, it's really the need for approval, I think is what it really comes down to. I talk about approval seeking. Like, dude, you don't need the approval from the other person. All you can do is present your stuff in the best way possible and talk about how you can help people, you know, like them. And they have to agree to be helped. Like they have to opt in, you know, to that. So I think it's really that is like, do you come in from a place of not needing someone's approval? And the reason why you need to sell is it's your duty. Like you're going to be like, think about what dating is like if you're single and you go on one date every 3 months. You think you might be a little desperate on that date. You might sound a little desperate unintentionally because there's not a lot of, you think you might continue dating that person because there's not a lot of other opportunity out there for you and get yourself in a position where you're in a relationship with someone you don't really want to be in a relationship with. Same thing happens in business. If you don't have a full pipeline and lots of people to talk to at all times, you end up sounding more desperate than you really are. And you end up making decisions and taking on clients that you actually shouldn't take on. And that's actually more harmful for your business in the long run.
It's such a good point, and it's the reason we all know. I think we know it as sales and business people that have been doing this for a while. You've got to, it goes back to what I was saying, you've got to keep the hopper full. And if you don't keep the hopper full, if you don't have those conversations, if you're not disciplined about making time for it and expecting it, you know, again, I speak to business. Oh, well, I'm waiting for the world to come to me. Well, you just wait. Yeah, the world will just, you know, I have a phrase that I use, which is called "eat or be eaten." You have a choice. Yeah, you have a choice, and it's like you can either go out and wait for you can either go out and say, I'm going to make my own destiny, I'm going to go and do these things. All the, you know, the stuff that you talked about is brilliant today, and I love that for those methodologies and philosophies. Or you can be eaten, and the world will eat you, and it will spit you up, and it will spit you out. It will, and we live in, you know, I'm not sure how it is in the US at the moment. I'm guessing it's pretty bad with regards to the COVID stuff. But in the UK here now, we're going to be going into a 12-month recession. Things are going to be tough, and I'm saying to people, if you don't know, if you can't work out how to do that stuff in the next 3 to 4 months, you're going to face a tough time because the business is not, you know, business is a very unforgiving place. So and on that point of COVID, and obviously, you know, it's a terrible thing what's happening with the world right now and what's going on, and hopefully you guys are staying safe there in the US, which is what I hope. And how do you, you know, how do you feel most of America is going to cope with sort of selling during this time? You know, is that something you feel that people have covered well?
I don't think people have got it covered well. I mean, I saw this most prominently in March and April where people are kind of unsure about whether they should prospect or not and sell. And I'm like, dude, you got a duty. You have a duty to prospect and sell. Now, the way you've been doing it is probably not going to resonate well with people. So if prior to this, you were saying, hey, James, my name's so-and-so, and I want to sell you this thing, and we're so great. Dude, people are going to tell you to F off if you do that. But you probably shouldn't have been doing that anyways, right?
Exactly.
So if you come in from a place of empathy and like think about this teach, don't take philosophy of like, what insights can I share? You know what? Like social proof works like this. People that are in situations where they're unsure of what to do, Robert Cialdini talked about this. What do? They look to other people in similar situations. You can be that bridge. As a salesperson, as a business owner, you can reach out to prospects and say, hey, I don't know if you're experiencing this, but we work with several customers like you, and they're telling me that they're having problems with this, and this is what they're focused on. We did a brainstorming session and came up with some good stuff. I thought I'd share with you. Cool if I send it along. You can lead the conversation with like insights about what other companies like them are doing, and that becomes the reason to talk to them. And yeah, they might not be ready to buy right now because of whatever, but you have a conversation and a relationship started. And a lot of this is your mentality around COVID. If you just go in assuming that no one's buying anything, which, dude, businesses are buying tons of stuff right now. There's companies like Gong here in the United States. They just closed like a $350 million round or something crazy. Like they're worth over $1 billion now. You know? So it's like, dude, people are buying their stuff. They've had record months. I've talked to so many companies that have record months. And it's because they adapt and they really think about like, what do our customers need and how can we support them right now? And we're still going to be proactive in reaching out to them.
You're so right. I mean, and I've got clients that have doubled their business in the last 6 months because of the
Yeah.
fact that they're in spaces that there is the law of equation, right? For the ups there's the down, for the downs there's the up, and for the joking aside, there was a company based near where I live here, which is when the plane stopped flying, they had to recruit 16 people because their job was to service jet planes. Well, the planes were down, so it was the right time to grow, right? So the plane's on the ground, so look, this sort of stuff works well. So look, it's been an absolute pleasure for me to get some insights for you, Jason. It's been great. I love the stuff that you do. So for those that don't sort of know your stuff, and how can they get access to some of your great content and some of the great recordings and videos that you're sharing with people, give a bit of a shout out to that and how people can get access to that.
Yeah, I would say the best place is what you brought up before, the virtual tour right now. So we're running to October 15th, I think is the last week, but you can watch all the replays still. So that's at tour.blissfulprospecting.com. And, what we're trying to really do different here is not just be a webinar where we do a product dump, the entire time, or talk about really surface level content, or do pre-recorded stuff. It's all live 2 to 3 times per week. It's 100% focused on prospecting. So if you want information like that and you want to hear folks like myself, folks like you on there talking about, prospecting and how to send better cold emails and LinkedIn and all that other good stuff, check that out. It's free, tour.blissfulprospecting.com. And the rest of the stuff, I would just go to our website, blissfulprospecting.com. There's information in there on I post content every day on prospecting. There's information on our programs if you want help with, prospecting and implementing this kind of stuff. And that's the hub where I would check out everything.
Look, and it's amazing, and I think the stuff that you do is I'm a big fan of it. As a person that lives and breathes sales and loves the whole element around it, I'm learning all the time, as I'm sure you are as a person.
Me too.
It's great when you listen to stuff and you just think, hey, I've gathered something from there. So it's fantastic to have you on here and have the time with you. So look, I really appreciate your time. It's incredibly valuable for me to have you here, and I'm grateful for you giving up your hard-earned time in the day when you've got lots of stuff ahead of you in the US there to go and do. So look, just a final big thanks from me for giving up your time and for sharing your insights. It's incredibly valuable. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Oh, no worries at all. All right, great stuff. Thanks, Jason. So there you have it. How was that? How did you find that session? Hopefully you enjoyed listening to Jason and what he's got to say. He's a real expert when it comes to prospecting, has a real great philosophy when it comes to sales and how to approach sales. And I hope you found it really useful and it's given you some insight, especially the ideas you had around prospecting, the ideas you had around the way to approach emails and the different types of engagements you have with your prospects. I know it's going to be valuable for you if you take some of this advice on board, and definitely take a little look at what he's doing at the tour at Blissful Prospecting. Some great insights and ideas and content there which Jason's sharing, so I really encourage you to take a look at that. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Again, as we're in lockdown, we're doing this on a remote basis. I'm hopefully going to get a chance to get back in the car quite soon and do some safe sales conversations with sales experts. But I've got a really great guy coming up on my next edition of sales conversations with sales experts, a guy called Richard Smith from Refract, and I'm going to be looking forward to sharing some of Richard's ideas and thoughts with you in the next series of sales conversations with sales experts. So if you think you'd love to be in this position and answer and sharing some of your sales knowledge and ideas with my audience, then I'd love to get you onto the video. Drop me an email or drop Alex an email at alex@jameswhite.business or monia@jameswhite.business, and we'll get you on board and we'll get you in place, sharing your insights and making sure that other business owners can get the sales advice, support and help they need to get incredible results. Thanks for watching again. If you like what you've watched with the video, please subscribe, share this video with other people you know. I'd love you to basically help them get the sales results they want. Without sales in your business, you don't have a business, and in this current economic time, sales is really key that we get everything in place. So do what you need to do, take the advice on board, take the action, make it happen, and hopefully you're going to get some great results for you and your company. Stay safe, everyone, and look forward to sharing another video with you really soon. Bye.